Hi, Roy here with another dispatch from the world of Horror Mayhem. So that's an event devised by the Bookish Bryants and plenty of co-hosts who I'll list. And this year, following the sad passing of Scott Bryant, it's an event being done in his honour. And first time I've really done it, and it's been fantastic because it's focusing on short works with this idea of decades of dread. It's a great way to sort of be reading stuff over a long period, finding works from different times. So I started off with stories out of Dead of Summer, a new anthology that's come out from British Library, basically because I knew it had some May stories set in the month of May, and this being Horror Mayhem, that seemed like a good idea. One of which was in...
I get it now.
Yeah.
Mayhem.
Yeah, exactly.
May.
Yeah, it's Mayhemulous for May.
Hem for May. Carry on.
Yeah, more about the May than the hem.
Yeah. Hems aren't really that interesting.
I don't know. The strange borders of things.
Strange borders of things, true.
That's very much what it's all about.
You're living out the
Anyway, having read a story from the 1820s, but I kind of wanted to read more late 19th century through to the present day, so I thought, well, we'll just file that 1820s story as a kind of back marker, and I'll carry on plunging through the 20th century, which has been great, and there's a couple of videos about that. So that happened. Then I was reading part of a separate little project, my buddy read of Spores of Doom.
Spores of Doom!
With Andrea from Infinite Text. And just working my way through the stories, and found I was reading...
Stories, as we might call them.
The Fall of the House of Usher, Edgar Allan Poe, 1839. So, almost by accident, I'd read a further decade from the 1800s without really having to do anything apart from read the story. So then I thought, well, if I have time, I'll try and do the 1800s as well, so I can get a complete run from as early as the first decade of the 1800s to the decade we're in. That could be fun. So, Fall of the House of Usher, I've read before, a long time ago. Andrea and I both agree it's a bit lacking in fungus to be part of this particular anthology, not that it isn't an awesome story. I mean, you can really see why Poe has this sort of status as a kind of one of the originators of strange tales and weird fiction. There's such a lot going on. A lot of it's implied, and really is a great story, despite its relative lack of fungus. So that was my 1830s pick. Now, coming into the 1800s with a will, finding something from the very first decade of that century wasn't too easy, but returning to our haunted shores, one of the British Library Tales of the Weird collections. So the theme is Tales from the Coasts of the British Isles, and it's edited by Emily Alder, Jimmy Packham, Joan Passy. That's actually got a narrative poem called The Haunted Beach, from 1800 by Mary Robinson, which was fine. It was got some striking imagery. There's a sort of been bad doings on the beach, and there's ghostly figures haunting a malefactor throughout their life. The Haunted Beach. I almost read it as a Poetry Thursday thing. The thing with rhyming poetry, unless you read it really well, it can sound a bit comical, and it's not meant to be comical. Maybe if Jennie read it, it would sound alright.
It would sound great.
Sound great,
I read
yeah.
it. So read it.
Well, not now.
No, not now. Lord, sir.
See what you think. So, the Haunted Beach, 1800s. The train has left the station. 1810s wasn't that easy to find either. But Sandman, now where did that was in Promethean Horrors. Classic Tales of Mad Science, edited by Xavier, Aldana, Reyes. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Has The Sandman, not that one, by E.T.A. Hoffman. So sort of Tales of Hoffman is something I've always sort of vaguely known about. Is The Flying Dutchman one of them? But he's one of those, like, I don't really know exactly what his deal is, but hey, yeah, Hoffman, Tales of.
He tells tales.
He does, yeah,
Hoffman.
yeah.
And he tells, I think The Flying Dutchman is one of his.
Oh, I think it is, yeah, yeah.
But, isn't Nutcracker and the Mouse King?
Oh, the original stories
The
on which the
original story of
Nutcracker's
the Nutcracker.
based.
Yeah.
Quite possibly, yeah.
I think they're sort of a cross between spooky and fairy talery, mailery. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll shut up and read this poem to myself.
Yes, see that you do. Also says here, one of the key figures of German Romanticism. Huge influence on the development of the fantastic tale.
I'm now picturing him as that man standing on the cliff in that picture by
the looking out across the clouds.
What's his name? The painter.
He has a name.
David Friedrich.
That's the one. Yeah. You don't have to stand to be a romantic. You don't have to stand on that actual mountain.
Don't you?
No, I don't think so. Well, it could be. It
looks a bit iconic.
Anyway, The Sandman. What a great story! It's got alchemy. It's got a uncanny figure. It's got all sorts of wild images. It's a unfolding melodrama of dread. So really like this. Doesn't read like an ancient tale, a bit earlier than sort of Mary Shelley even. There's weird stuff about eyes. Really is fantastic. That was amazing, yes, and it is a mad science tale because of the alchemy aspect. I'd look for more Hoffman. Maybe read a whole collection of him. 1810s. I'll cut off the list. 1820s. That was the May Eve story I've read in this. Already talked about in an earlier video. Really good, and that was a fairy story, sort of, except it's about witches. It's a witchy story. What did I then want? 1830s, House of Usher, Fall of. 1840s was an interesting one. So, in Crawling Horrors, Creeping Tales of the Insect Weird, edited by Daisy Butcher and Janette Leaf. Really good collection. There is another Edgar Allan Poe called... Where's it gone? The Sphinx. So it isn't actually about a Sphinx. It's good. It's very short. If I told you the story, which I'm not going to, it would sound like one of those ironic, haha, yes, you thought it was that, but it was actually this kind of stories. But the fact it's set against the background of the cholera outbreak in New York, and really the way the imagery's done, and just a sort of sense that, yeah, that might be an explanation, but it's a pretty good story, but I didn't want it to be an absolute Poe fest, so I sought out another 1840s story and reread The Mummy's Foot by, rubbish pronunciation coming up, Théophile Gautier.
It's not bad. That's not bad pronunciation.
Was it something like Théophile Gautier?
Well, is there an accent on the E?
Yeah.
Théophile then.
Okay, yeah.
And Gautier would be roundabout right. Gautier.
The mummy's...
Théophile Gautier.
Mummy's foot, Gautier. So now we're in the fully in the world of Egyptomania. You know, people obsessed with the archaeological finds in Egypt, mummies. In real life, there were mummy unwrapping parties when an actual mummy, because there were thousands of them, would be, unwrapped. Will it be a fantastic princess or whatever?
Tell them
Probably
about
not.
The mummy cocktails.
There were mummy yes, because you could kind of distill them. So their sort of effluvia were turned into things like pigments for paints, cocktails.
Mummy Brown, that was a thing.
The idea, like a lot of things, there's a crazy idea they could be a sort of health tonic. So in that context, a fellow buys the foot of a mummy who actually is an Egyptian princess, and takes it home, and it's a little bit icky, the kind of relationship he has with this foot.
Really?
Well, not that. Yes,
not that icky.
It's, again, it's implied, isn't it? Implied. But it is always weird. The whole thing of the let's get these dead people and look at them as these fantastic mythological things. Let alone objects of beauty and objects of desire. So there's a mummy and time travel, and it is quite amusing as well. Well worth seeking out. So 1840s, done. 1850s, yeah, I had to go into the realms of unreal books for that. Edward Bulwer Lytton and his story The Haunted and the Haunters. So Bulwer Lytton, huge best-selling author of the times. I read one of his novels, the Fall of Pompeii one, last year. There's lots I'd like to read. There's some great collections of his supernatural tales, so I could have got this in a book, but I also wanted to do this in a timely fashion, especially as now I'm working my rigid slots of days. So I read it on Project Gutenberg, but what a fantastic story. It's like a template for the haunted house tale, really, and as well as the sort of things you get in a haunted house story, the atmosphere, manifestations. There's also stuff about magic and the way the spaces in the building are described, and there's like secret rooms and things like that come to light. All of that is in there, and it's sort of infused a bit by the relatively early days of the sort of psychical research work, sort of the people's investigations into hauntings, and the sense that it could be just an unknown science. If it happens, it can't be supernatural. By definition, if it happens, it's natural. So yeah, really, really good story by the unjustly forgotten Edward Bulwer Lytton. He suffers a bit because he's the guy who actually wrote those famous opening lines, "It was a dark and stormy night." So people assume, Mr. Potboilers, Mr. Boring Victorian. And for the 1860s, leaving the precincts of the British Library, Dracula's Brood is an anthology edited by Richard Dalby, and there's actually two of these of ye oldie vampire stories that aren't Dracula. They're Dracula's chums, because there was lots of vampire fiction around. It's not like Bram Stoker sort of invented it on a blank sheet of paper, more like pulling together lots of stuff and packaging it in a way that made a really, really sensational and popular novel. Anyway, in Dracula's Brood, I found The Last Lords of Gardenal by William Gilbert, 1867. Interesting story, because you've got wicked aristocrats, they're not the vampires, and you've got again I'm going to say melodrama, the way it sort of unfolds. You've got sort of will virtue be triumphant or will it be destroyed, and you've got sort of punishment visited on the evil ones, and some pretty good vampire description as well. So that was fun for, where are we, 1860s. Right, and 1870s was the last decade I needed to do to get my complete run. Turning now to minor hauntings, chilling tales of spectral youth. So it's like Ghosts Junior, edited by Jen Baker, which I'd not actually cracked open yet. Saw that there was a Charlotte Riddell story, another great author, not as famous as she ought to be. So Charlotte Riddell used to be super well known, and in this you get Walnut Tree House, a ghost story, and it's another fantastic, as it were, classic ghost story, with the kind of somebody daring to sleep overnight in the room despite all the warnings that that's a bad thing to do, and it's actually quite sweet because there is a ghostly child in it, and obviously that is scary and creepy, and most people have fled the scene because of that, but our hero actually doesn't flee, doesn't try to destroy the ghost. It plays out in a different way. Has a really nice romantic ending as well, which is a good place to finish up. Because 1880s I had read an Ambrose Bierce story, 1890s I'd read The Yellow Wallpaper. Then we're in the 1900s. You know, I'm nearly alive by then. So 120. Not days of sodomy, 120 years
Thank you.
of scariness have been experienced. So what a great event. It's been like a really easy breezy and enjoyable and kind of a, learning experience. Great prompt to get into my book collection with books that would otherwise maybe not have been read. Authors to follow up later, all sorts of cool stuff. So, yes, that might be it for me for Horror Mayhem. So, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with something else.